Maggie walked down the street, tears streaming down her face. After years of fertility treatments, she had given up on having children. She explored adoption options and eventually found a good match. 3-year-old triplets. She signed the adoption papers, but when she did a background check, she got the shock of her life. She had no choice but to cancel the adoption, and worst of all, Maggie and Tom. During this time together, I have formed a deep bond with the triplets. Love. They have a deep bond with the children, but the bombshell they found about the triplets made it clear they couldn't leave them to boys in the dark for a while. Has a darker history than the adoption agency is letting on. The details of this disturbing past overwhelmed Maggie, and she just wanted to experience what it's like to be a mother and start a family. She's not ready for all of this. Maggie and Tom face a challenge. Tough call. The triplets need a loving and safe home to heal and grow, but the truth they learn makes them unsure if they can provide it. Like family, what happened to the triplets' past was so shocking. Maggie and will Tom eventually call off the adoption? It all happened so fast. They quickly packed up the house, bought the necessities, and prepared the children's room. Between Maggie and Tom felt nervous as they drove to the office, because they know their lives will change in a matter of minutes. Hope things get better. Maggie ponders the story behind the triplets, but things are moving too fast. Give them a whirlwind of information before they know it. They were already driving home with 3 toddlers in the back of the car. Boy, it was a thrill feeling for Maggie, but she also wanted it to be final. Being a mother is filled with happiness. The first week was challenging because everyone was adjusting to their new kids. Like Maggie and Tom predictably struggle with the complexities of raising triplets. But after the first month, things started to settle down. Maggie, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, their happiness did not last long among them. One boy, Mika, started acting differently. He started hating his brothers Cody and Alex and showed severe symptoms. Bad behavior. In the end, Tom had to separate Mika's room from his siblings to ensure their safety. Maggie couldn't help but wonder about the reason for Mika's behavior, so she contacted him. What confused her about the foster agency was their refusal to provide any information about the little. The boy's past was kept a secret. Maggie shared her concerns and the lack of help from the adoption agency. Tom, they realized that action was needed to prevent the situation from deteriorating because no one was there willing to reveal information about the triplets' history. They feel alone solving this problem, so they decided to take matters into their own hands and ordered 3 online DNA tests. Test the kit to see if the triplets have any other siblings or family members can be contacted. After days of anxious anticipation, the test kit arrived and they wasted no time running the test. The process of waiting for the results felt like a long wait while he was. The situation at home has changed dramatically. At first, Mika was the only problem kid, but soon Alex was driving too. He didn't show any signs of violence. It was the beginning of hiding for hours, which caused Maggie and Tom great concern and panic. Finally, the long-awaited results arrived and shocked them with test results. There was a DNA match in the database. The deceased father of the triplets. While sad about his death, there is one positive aspect to the outcome. They now have their father's name. Now knowing that the father of the triplets, Maggie and Tom, hope to pass this information, they can find other family members. However, when they realized they only received the initials Kovsky when their hopes were dashed, Maggie read this aloud. A name thought it was a good start, but Tom was still not sure. Sad, despite the limited information, Maggie and Tom are determined not to give up on the boys. They made further inquiries. They googled the father's name and they found it on the internet. Things will upend their lives in a devastating way. Their search led them to an old news article describing the article. A fire destroyed the triplets' old home. The article attached a family photo of the mother's 1-year-old triplets and their father. This news article mentions that all are safe and sound. The ground escaped the fire. No details were provided on the cause of the fire or the names of the family members. They only referred to their parents as Mr. and Mrs. Laskovsky, and Maggie felt it's strange to think of another way to gather more information. The worst part is that the whole time Maggie and Tom had been together, and the triplets formed a strong bond. But the bombshell they found about the triplets made it clear. Mean they can't keep them. It's weird, Maggie said. Arthur Sanderson. Tom read aloud. Why is he here? Will there be different names in the picture? She looked at her husband, but he returned. Can't answer the question. So they decided to continue their search without realizing they will fall down a very deep rabbit hole. Their search for the name Arthur Sanderson turned up everything. But one in particular stood out. It revolves around a lost boy despite his age. Rich in information, this article even includes an address here, prompting Maggie and Tom to investigate further. Leaving the triplets with a babysitter is out of the question, especially considering how weird they are. Strange behavior. So Maggie decided to go alone. She told Tom there was an emergency, to find her and say goodbye to the triplets and drive off. About 2 hours later, Maggie arrived at the designated address. But as Maggie gazed at the dilapidated house, the shock swept over her. She seems to have been deserted for years. Lived. Still, Maggie was determined not to give up. She went to the neighbor's house and rang the doorbell. Lucky to find someone at home. I've been waiting for you, you know, the old lady said to Maggie. You, what does that mean? Asked Maggie, confused. Well, I kept expecting someone to ask about the family next door, especially after what happened to Maggie's curiosity. It was clear there was more to it than that. I can ask them what happened. What is it? Well, there's a mother and a father and a son in that house. I find them rather peculiar. They stay indoors for days. Boy, never went to school. Sometimes screams echoed in the streets in the middle of the night, but no one ever did. One day a SWAT team came and raided the house. They took the little boy to the police station and I never saw them again. Didn't even pick up their stuff. I think everything is still in the house for at least 40 years maybe. I haven't moved much longer. Why would someone just leave home and never come back for their stuff? What does this mean for the triplets? Their father was involved when he was young. Some kind of criminal activity. Maggie's mind was filled with questions about the man when the house was searched. How old is the child? The old woman shrugged her shoulders. I'm not sure. Maybe 17 or 18. Maggie had heard enough. I have to go, she said to the woman and walked out of the room. Yet Maggie had not yet returned home. She believed that the house itself contained the answer. So she sneaked into the house. Maggie knew she was breaking the law, but she felt the need to uncover the truth. Born of a mysterious past, besides she thought there would be no one at home, at least she was. Think so. The house is full of dust and old things like the people who lived in it. I was gonna be back that night. There's a pile of unopened mail on the doorstep and pictures on the wall. Come mother was cooking shortly before the raid, but then Maggie knows. I noticed something. Maggie carefully followed the footsteps, her heart racing as they carried her upstairs, in a room with a closed door. Maggie pressed her ear to the door, hoping to hear something inside. To Maggie's surprise, she heard someone snoring on the other side. She kept thinking it might be the father of the triplets, slowly opening the door. Look inside, but the old house creaked and the door creaked even though Maggie, trying to keep quiet, the noise woke the man up. Who is there? The man said he felt sleepy while rubbing his sleeping eyes. Then he looked at Maggie. Who are you? He asked again. Surprisingly, he didn't seem to be alive. On the contrary, he looked rather sad. I'm Maggie, she said cautiously. Excuse me, are you Arthur Sanderson? You, why do you want to know? Answered the man. He seems understandably reluctant to reveal his identity. He was probably homeless, but Maggie had a feeling that she thought that a man looks like the little boy in the picture. Maggie decided to take the risk and decided to tell the man everything about her. Nothing to lose. Well, I'd like to know because I'm trying to find the father of my adopted son. They were 4-year-old triplets with dark brown hair, Maggie immediately noted. I noticed a change in the man's expression. Have you taken my children? So you're Arthur. Can you tell me about you and your family? Did something happen? The man sighed and he didn't want to tell Maggie the truth because he knew it. This is gonna sound weird. He wanted the best for his sons to worry about Maggie after learning of their dark lives. I'll tell you everything on one condition, said the man. No matter what I say to you, you have to agree to complete the adoption. Maggie, I know she can't just blindly accept this offer, but she couldn't say no to him. She had to reveal the truth, so she lied. Yes, I promise, Maggie assured the man dishonestly. He says again, "It's a long story, but it all starts. I was arrested for robbery. I was very young at the time but had already proposed to the mother of my children, asking for money for the wedding. I ended up in prison and she supported me a few years after my release. The mother, Beska, was pregnant, but our living situation isn't ideal and I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. But Becca was an addict." Arthur looked down at the ground and could not hold eye contact with the visibly shocked Maggie. "I figured to give Becca some money to secure our family's future. Of his own death, this enabled Becca to collect insurance money and build a life for the four of them. Unfortunately, her drug addiction overcame her when the children were only 3 years old. When she died, Maggie gasped. She never anticipated that the children would have such a tragic past. "I'm sorry," she said to Arthur. A tear rolled down his cheek. "I wanted to be there for them when Becca died, but according to the official records, I also presumed that there's nothing I can do. It's breaking my heart." Maggie had heard enough. It was much worse than she had imagined. She promised Arthur she would adopt the boys no matter what. After hearing his story, she couldn't accept it. When she got home, she explained everything to her husband and he agreed. They had to cancel the adoption, which was a very difficult decision, but Maggie knew it was the right one. Said she and Tom weren't the right parents for the kids, but they believed in Santoku. The fetus would find a loving home that Tom and Maggie thought they should kiss. Tell Arthur what they've decided. So they drove with the triplets to meet him. When they arrived at the house, Arthur was startled to see them when he entered. Tears of joy streamed down his face as his sons were reunited. However, Maggie and Tom had unexpected news to share, but it didn't. Not the news people were expecting. They've orchestrated a once-in-a-lifetime surprise that includes Arthur. They registered Arthur as a foster parent, but not under his real name. They used the name he had chosen for himself. They explained everything to a social worker and bribed her. She believes Arthur is a good father, but that wasn't all. Maggie and Tom knew they couldn't stay in the old house any longer. So they offered to let Arthur and the children stay in their guest room until he finds a permanent home so the boys can still be with. Maggie and Tom stay in touch and Arthur can get used to being a father. It all worked out for the best in the end.